clear she had no intention of warming up to Camilla anytime soon. But it was what happened behind closed doors that truly shocked palace insiders. Before the wedding, Queen Elizabeth's private secretary released the post-wedding photographs and noted that the Queen and Philip stood back from the couple on the steps, which prevented any happy family photos from being taken. Anne's expression in those images has been described as frosty at best, and multiple sources confirmed that she had made it. Queen Elizabeth skipped the civil ceremony entirely. Prince Philip looked like a hostage in the official photos. As for Princess Anne, she made her pure hatred known the only way royals know how, with total, cold-blooded passive aggression. Body language expert Judy James analyzed actually makes sense. As queen, Camilla has the right to shape the monarchy. Wanting to protect the business from the York family disasters is logical. The Epstein connection, the court cases, and the public backlash are all genuine problems. Cutting ties with that disaster is a solid PR strategy. On the flip side, Princess Anne has a point too. Family is family, and kids should not have to pay for the mistakes of their parents. Freezing out two young women who did absolutely nothing wrong is just plain cruel, no matter how bad it looks in the newspapers. Insiders claim that Charles has been desperately trying to play the middle ground, incredibly generous and understanding. On paper, it looked like a flawless, happy ending where two lifelong rivals finally buried the hatchet. But here is the thing about the royal family. The public image and the private reality are rarely the same thing. Experienced royal commentators know that the Windsors are world-class performers. They can smile through fury. They can laugh through resentment. They can say all the right words while feeling something of it. This was the same Princess Anne who previously flat-out refused to curtsy at the wedding and forced the palace to write a legal loophole just so she could avoid bowing. Suddenly, she was handing out praise on national television. A few months later, she doubled down in Tatler magazine, calling Camilla increme. A bunch of viewers cheered Anne on for refusing to bend the knee, calling her the only authentic person left in the entire family tree. Others started arguing about the palace rulebook, questioning if a born princess is even legally required to curtsy to someone who married into the business 50 years later. Later that same year, a sign of respect that every single other royal had just pulled off. The clip ended up all over social media almost instantly. Social media absolutely blew up over the clip. People started tearing the footage apart frame by frame. In November 2024, the two women popped up together at the University of London for Foundation Day. Anne was serving as the Chancellor of the university, which meant she had to present Camilla with an honorary doctorate of literature. Responsibilities as head of state. By the end of 2025, he managed to push through well enough to hit 532 official engagements, which was actually the highest number for any royal that year. But the physical toll was absolutely brutal, and the constant, exhausting drama between Camilla and Anne behind the scenes definitely did not help the recovery process. The absolute last thing Charles needed on his plate was an open war between his wife and his sister. But that is exactly what was happening behind when she was just 18 years old. Nobody could question her dedication. The king's cancer battle threw the entire operation into chaos. Charles had to focus purely on his health, enduring weekly treatments while trying not to drop his. She suddenly started popping up at all kinds of events, filling in for Charles at functions, and essentially becoming the main public face of the entire family business. Behind closed doors, palace staff dropped hints that she was also flexing her muscles, especially when it came to calling the shots on which family members actually got allowed out in public to represent, completing 433 and 457 engagements, respectively. Even in 2025, when Charles took the top spot with 532 engagements, Anne was right behind him with 478. She had been serving the monarchy since 1969 to present the crown. Princess Anne, meanwhile, was doing what she had always done. She was working. In 2023 and 2024, she was officially named the hardest-working royal, not to them. The idea of punishing and humiliating two young women for the actions of their parents went against everything Anne believed. Sources claimed she was not about to sit back and watch the drama unfold without doing something about it. She reportedly demanded a meeting with Charles to force him to reverse the snubs. Princess Anne took the whole thing personally. Beatrice and Eugenie were her nieces, and they had not actually done anything wrong. Their father's massive scandals belonged to him. Then came the alleged confrontation that allegedly set the palace on fire. At a Buckingham Palace garden party, Anne and Camilla were seen together, and insiders claimed the tension between them at the event was all anyone could talk about. According to ignited questions about what is really happening behind palace walls and whether long-standing tensions are becoming impossible to ignore. So what really happened between Camilla and Princess Anne, and why did King Charles react so strongly? Join us as we uncover the dramatic events that have everyone talking.
The Queen has expressed her sincere wish for Camilla, the Duchess of Cornwall, to be known as Queen Consort when Prince Charles becomes king.
One confrontation was all it took to throw the royal family into fresh controversy. What allegedly began as a tense exchange between Queen Camilla and Princess Anne reportedly escalated so quickly that King Charles was forced to step in, leaving palace staff stunned. The incident is the perfect excuse for a family to drop the act and start acting terribly. Wealth does not buy emotional maturity. It just gives people a bigger stage to dump decades of unresolved baggage right onto kids who have nothing to do with the original fight. Closed doors. The actual trigger for this blow-up was not some random insult or a public snub. It was way worse. The whole fight boiled down to family, two young princesses, and the absolute absurdity of punishing children for the mistakes of their parents. A massive medical emergency. It is pretty funny how a dynasty worth billions can handle international politics, but completely collapses the second they have to sit in a room together without a script. Can Charles find a way to bring Camilla and Anne together before this rift tears the monarchy apart? Or is this feud too personal and too deep to a 50-year grudge does not magically vanish just because someone said a few nice things in a television documentary? The resentment never actually goes away. It just waits for a better time to come out. And then came a moment at Westminster Abbey that ripped the curtain wide open and reminded the world that some royal wounds never true insults while keeping fake smiles glued to their faces. The two women put on a massive show whenever the cameras are rolling, but everyone behind the scenes has known about their deep mutual hatred for decades. Completely different. And according to multiple palace insiders, that is exactly what was happening between Camilla and Anne. One palace insider gave a completely blunt description of how these two actually get along. They noted that Camilla and Anne are highly skilled at trading brutal. Was the spark. What happened at Charles and Camilla's wedding in 2005 was the explosion that confirmed everything. The document that split the family in two. When Charles finally married Camilla in 2005, the palace expected everyone to treat it like a major victory. After decades of cheating scandals, public embarrassment, and the death of Princess Diana, Charles was finally locking down the woman he actually wanted. But inside the family inner circle, the vibe was completely dead. Dropped hints for years that the hatred under the surface is practically radioactive. It is just two women chained together by an old hookup, forced into a family dynamic that neither one actually wanted. But if the love triangle, the guy actually likes Beatrice and Eugenie. He even handed Beatrice a new title with a major trust shortly after her dad got stripped of his remaining royal honors. But the pressure from Camilla and William to completely cut them off has allegedly been constant. To make things even worse, Princess Anne is completely refusing to shut up about it, turning the whole situation into a ticking time bomb. The actual mess here is a total nightmare. Charles is dealing with cancer, trying to run a country, and managing a family that is broken behind closed doors. Now his wife and his sister, the two people he actually needs in his corner, are reportedly tearing him apart. Sources say Charles is completely stuck. He cannot kick his nieces to the curb without ruining his relationship with his sister, and he cannot tell his wife to back off without making the Queen look completely powerless. The British royal family has managed to outlive wars. Meanwhile, Camilla married Andrew, but she was also having a secret affair with Prince Charles. The entire setup was a chaotic, emotional disaster. Decades later, the grudges are still very much alive. Most people miss the fact that Anne and Andrew Parker Bowles actually stayed close after the breakup. They spent the next... The wildest part about this entire disaster is that Camilla and Anne have been stuck in the same family for decades. They smile for the cameras at state events. They stand next to each other at ceremonies. They pretend everything is completely normal, but palace staff have a few decades bumping into each other at horse races and elite parties. Anne even showed up to the funeral of Andrew's second wife in 2010. That constant hanging out made everything incredibly uncomfortable for Camilla. She mourned, meaning old grudges had to take a back seat. Levin pointed out that the vibe between Anne and Camilla got noticeably warmer right after the funeral. Then came the coronation of King Charles in May 2023, which brought Anne's most public display of forced friendliness. In a rare interview for a BBC documentary, Anne spoke about her sister-in-law with what looked like actual respect. She claimed that Camilla's understanding of the job and her support for the king had been absolutely outstanding, adding that even though the role was not a natural fit, Camilla was doing it really well. The public could not believe April 2021, the whole family dynamic fast-tracked into a forced truce. Royal biographer Angela Levin wrote that the funeral basically forced everyone to huddle up. The new priority was keeping Queen Elizabeth stable while at the front, playing the role of the ultimate hosts as senior family members filed inside. Prince William leaned in for a performative kiss on Camilla's cheek. Kate Middleton dropped into a flawless curtsy. The Duke and Duchess of Edinburgh both delivered the mandatory bows and curtsies. On the surface, the entire operation was running exactly the way the palace truly heal, the curtsy that never came. On March 11, 2024, the royal family crowded into Westminster Abbey for the annual Commonwealth Day service. The entire spectacle was broadcast to millions of people globally. King Charles and Queen Camilla stood at the handbook demanded. Then Princess Anne walked up. She planted a quick kiss on both of Camilla's cheeks and immediately walked away. She did not curtsy or bow, and the cameras caught the exact second it happened. People watching at home, I instantly noticed that Anne completely skipped the mandatoring all of this. The claims come from anonymous sources, and nobody has verified a single word. Still, the whole situation fits the exact pattern people have watched for decades. Anne protects the family, Camilla protects the business, and Charles is stuck right in the center. Witnesses is a massive escalation in a feud that both women spent years trying to hide from the public. Sources from inside the palace described the incident as one of the most awkward and uncomfortable scenes the palace staff had witnessed in recent memory. Naturally, Buckingham Palace, Clarence House, and Kensington Palace are completely ignored. Palace sources, Anne allegedly confronted Camilla directly and spoke about her treatment of Beatrice and Eugenie, and the exchange reportedly happened in front of several members of staff. Princess Anne is famous for being blunt, but she rarely loses her cool in front of the employees. For her to openly challenge Camilla in front of Anne held all the ceremonial leverage in that room, and everyone watching knew exactly what was happening. But what happened next made the curtsy controversy look like a minor disagreement of her sister-in-law. In a normal universe, it would just be a boring school ritual. But with 50 years of toxic history between these two, the imagery was impossible to miss. Because Camilla was about to make a move that would push Anne to her absolute breaking point: the King's battle and the Queen's rising power. Back in February 2024, Buckingham Palace, next 5 decades of royal history. Anne was completely devastated when Andrew dumped her in 1973 to marry Camilla. According to insiders, Anne immediately panicked. Has said that when Andrew started seeing Anne, Camilla got her revenge by starting an affair with Anne's brother, Prince Charles. It was a tangled web of romantic entanglements that would go on to shape that jumped straight into a classic rebound and married Captain Mark Phillips. Unsurprisingly, that entire marriage crashed and burned into a divorce by 1992, revolutions and public disasters that would have ruined anyone else. This current fight between Camilla and Anne is a completely different mess. This isn't a debate over royal policy. This is just pure petty history and decades of baggage. The whole feud basically traces back to a messy dating circle from the 70s that never actually ended. The irony of this entire mess is incredible. Charles spent his whole life waiting to become king. He dealt with decades of bad press, public hatred, and constant criticism. He had his first marriage fall apart on global television, buried his mother, and then had to deal with a major cancer diagnosis. It is about an avoided curtsy and a piece of palace paperwork that permanently divided the house. These two women represent exactly what the monarchy needs to stay alive, but they are never going to trust each other. Made marriage pretty much impossible for the Queen's daughter. But here is where things get complicated. While Andrew was seeing Anne, a young woman named Camilla Shand was watching from the sidelines. Camilla and Andrew had been dating on and off since the late 1960s. Royal biographer Penny Junor, Andrew Parker Bowles. He was smooth, confident, and heavily connected to the royal inner circle. His dad was literally best friends with the Queen Mother. He was the exact blueprint for the kind of guy Anne was supposed to be around, and she fell hard. They were spotted everywhere together, from polo matches to official military events. The relationship was totally real, even though the palace made it obvious that a wedding was out of the question. Andrew was Catholic, which meant the outdated Act of Settlement of 1701. Another insider claimed that Camilla basically views the entire York branch of the family as a giant stain on the monarchy. According to that source, she is actively pushing Charles and William to permanently cut ties and distance the institution from them completely. Of the king and Camilla that royal watchers expected to see. Palace insiders pointed the finger directly at Camilla. One source told reporters that Princess Anne believed the exclusions had Camilla's fingerprints all over them, mostly because King Charles is not usually that cold on his own. On their social calendar. The sisters were also noticeably missing from the Buckingham Palace garden parties. To top it all off, when Eugenie announced her third pregnancy, the official statement skipped the usual enthusiastic men. Found her constant media games incredibly annoying. Anne has always taken a completely old-school approach to the whole royal circus. Her entire philosophy is about showing up, doing the actual work, keeping your mouth shut, and never whining to the public for sympathy. To Anne, both Diana and Camilla represented the same fundamental problem. They were outsiders who dragged cheap, exhausting drama into an institution that Anne spent her entire life trying to run with quiet dignity. But then, something changed. After decades of cold shoulders and barely concealed hostility, Camilla and Anne seemed to find common ground, and fans started to believe the feud was finally over. The public was fooled. A loophole like that. It sent a massive, undeniable message straight to Charles and Camilla. Anne respected her brother, and she loved him, but she absolutely refused to treat his wife as an equal, out to someone they considered deeply unpopular. That legal document was completely unprecedented. In the entire history of the modern monarchy, nobody had ever reportedly drew up an extraordinary document. It was officially stated that Princess Anne would never be required to curtsy to Camilla. A former courtier told the press at the time that this was done at the request of Anne and Princess Alexandra, both of whom had given their adult lives to royal service, and saw no reason to long before it's too late. The love story that poisoned everything. The massive feud between Queen Camilla and Princess Anne had absolutely nothing to do with royal protocols or government policy. It was entirely about a series of historical archives is still losing its sanity over a dating pool that was completely exhausted during the Nixon administration. Back in the summer of 1970, a 19-year-old Princess Anne started dating a flashy British Army officer named a Guy. Specifically, they both dated the exact same man, resulting in a betrayal that neither side ever chose to forget. It is honestly remarkable that a family with access to global intelligence networks and century-in-the-scenes state paperwork and keep his weekly meetings with the Prime Minister. They kept the specific details of the diagnosis completely locked down. The only information the palace actually shared was that it was not prostate cancer, even though doctors originally stumbled across it while checking out his enlarged prostate. The king's diagnosis completely flipped the script for Camilla. With Charles forced to step out of the spotlight, she immediately stepped into a massive, high-profile role, dropped the news that King Charles had cancer. The announcement immediately set off a massive wave of panic across the country and all over the global media. The palace quickly clarified that while Charles was pulling back from public appearances to start treatments, he was still going to handle behind. Early 2026, the situation changed dramatically. Beatrice and Eugenie were allegedly banned